Howdy, and welcome to the show. Cooper's Code examines legal issues. We seek to impart wisdom and share knowledge amongst the people that we work with so that we can all do the best job possible for our clients. In this show and the next few episodes, we're going to be doing something that is an examination of the life cycle of a case. This is done in part because of it being summer season and there being clerks and other people at the firm who may not have as much experience with all the various phases of a case. It's also an opportunity to dive in, bone up, share knowledge about how we approach things, seek others to write in or comment on how they also do things so that we can get the best results for our clients. I want to pay some homage as part of this intro. I would refer to this as the Lancaster series in terms of the life cycle of the case. Kevin Lancaster was a very talented lawyer. I had the opportunity to work with him and see just how amazing he was at parsing things and, in essence, building these amazing outlines in his head about how to strategize through cases. He also would gather all the younger attorneys, paralegals, clerks, and once a year go through a life cycle of the case process. That's the inspiration for this. We hope people enjoy it. In this episode, we're going to start out with the very beginning. That's the intake and initial investigation phase of the case. At the very beginning of the case, there's going to be an opportunity to have a conversation with someone. That can come a variety of ways. These days, it can come via text message, it can come via email, it can come via phone call, it can come via Zoom, it can come via an in-person visit. But at some point, one has an opportunity to speak with somebody. And in our field, it's usually somebody who's suffered something that has been awful. That's an opportunity to be human, use all of the skills that we have been talking about at various points in some of the episodes of Cooper's Code. One is there not just as a lawyer and as an advocate. One is there to hear someone's story, absorb the harm that they have suffered so that one can learn how one can best help someone else. Being compassionate, being ears open, and engaging with that person in the most heartfelt way possible so that they can feel heard. An additional piece of that conversation, it's essential as one's gathering information to also answer questions that person has. That initial conversation, usually people have a lot of questions. One of the easiest ways to start that conversation is to start with, do you have any questions that you really want answered? You can hear and have them answered and be able to focus on what we're talking about. You'll find that will be an opportunity to answer questions, burning questions that people might have that you might not think of. A lot of times people don't know what questions to ask. And that's where making sure that one goes through the key points that somebody who's never been through this process, most likely, has as questions going forward. The common ones are, how long does this take? It can take anywhere from 6 months if one resolves a case for policy limits pre-litigation, if the injuries exceed the policy, to years, to more than years if it goes through trial and through appeal. Helping people understand the timeline, helping people understand what their obligations are going to be in terms of filling out forms, being available to answer questions, making sure that they are a good patient in terms of following through with their medical treatment, preparing for deposition, mediation, and trial. We tend to talk about the whole process in that initial conversation with not granularity, but from an overview so that as we go through the experience of the case and litigation, things aren't new for them. When a mediation comes up, it's something that they had heard about way back in the very beginning. There's various studies out there about how much information people need to be able to retain what they've heard. A common number out there is 7, that people need to see, hear, or read things 7 times before they truly process it. And so having those little nuggets at the beginning about what that timeline and process looks like helps potential clients understand what that process is going to look like going forward. That's what people oftentimes refer to as the intake. That's that initial conversation. There are other things that are important during that period. It's going over the representation agreement, and that's making sure they understand the terms of the representation, going through the conflict waiver to the extent that there is a conflict waiver. And we err on the side of caution on conflict waivers. What do I mean by that? In a lot of cases, someone, even if there's not a bystander or family member who's been involved in the incident itself, there is a spouse, and that spouse has the right to a loss of consortium. And if that spouse has a right to a loss of consortium, then there is the potential for conflict should something happen throughout the case. So again, making sure we err on the side of caution in terms of getting conflict waivers done. The other documents that are important are general releases. These are things that one can use to get the police report, any other non-medical record report, HIPAA releases, Kaiser release if the client happens to be a Kaiser patient, since those are different, and then a client questionnaire. And we don't have the client fill out the client questionnaire at that initial meeting, but we'll oftentimes set a deadline for it. Lots of people have different approaches to the client questionnaire in terms of how thorough it is, what goes in it, and its format. What we've found that can be beneficial for the work of the case is that if it follows the form interrogatory setup, and for anyone who's watching this outside of California, California has what are known as form interrogatories, a series of just check the box questions that it's easy to just check the box, send it to the other side. Since we know the defendants are always going to fill those out and they have a lot of pertinent information, we just have the client questionnaire cover the form interrogatories in that order, so it's easy for us to put into the system. And then we have our own individual questions that are helpful for us in terms of getting to know the client better and getting to know the story of what happened to the client. Second phase is evidence gathering. And evidence gathering can take a variety of time. It can be a short process. But here are some things that we try to obtain as early as we can. So police reports, photographs from any sort of police investigation. We generally obtain body cam footage. Most agencies at this point have body cam footage. And most of the time you're able to get it. On occasion, you'll run into an agency that will say that you have to have a subpoena to do it. That can be a dilemma. And the reason I say that is because sometimes there are cases that are cases where one should be able to resolve them without having to file a lawsuit. And why do I say that? And why do I reference pre-litigation? We do a lot of bicycle cases. And one of the unfortunate things that we sometimes find in bicycle cases is that the injuries exceed the policies. And so it's more a question of being able to put the case together in a way where an adjuster can defend paying the policy. A lot of times that does not require litigation. It's more efficient for our clients not to put it into litigation. If one needs a body camera to see what was said to the officer that might be different than the police report, that can be a challenge. So that just kind of comes down to a judgment call. If they won't give it to you, you file suit right off the bat so that you can use the subpoena power to get that. Also on the list of obtaining early 911 audio. So the audio logs tend to be recorded over. It's not as fast as it used to be. As data and storage has gotten cheaper, they'll sometimes preserve 911 audio for longer periods. But there can be some absolutely marvelous things that people or witnesses say on the 911 audio. At the same time, getting the CAD log, computer assisted dispatch log, from the agencies that responded. So oftentimes that's done through a central 911 database. So all of the different agencies will be listed on that one sheet. But sometimes there can be a number of different agencies that respond to an incident. And that's where making sure you get all the data from them, because you can sometimes find that there is a missing witness, a phone number, or some statement that is made in that catalog that is very, very helpful. Another thing that is important to get out early are security cameras. So security cameras similarly don't record over as quickly as they used to, but they do oftentimes record over past data. Getting out there, and whether that's using Google Street View or whether that's actually going out on foot and canvassing the area, we have found as we try to get security camera footage that sometimes family members or those involved in the incident themselves can make more headway than a lawyer or an investigator. What do I mean by that? If someone comes in and says, I'm really sorry to bother you. I got hit out there about a week ago, and the insurance company has given me a hard time about it. Do you have any security camera footage that I might be able to record with my phone or take a look at just to be able to show them what happened? Because they have a different view of what happened. We found that security guards can be more friendly to individuals like that and maybe look the other way, even if there's a policy of not giving it out. That said, if an entity is being more difficult, sending an evidence preservation letter to let them know that you want this information can help. We've unfortunately had the experience that even when you've pushed to get things, even when you've threatened, even when you've sent a evidence preservation letter, that sometimes the security camera footage gets recorded over and it does not get handed over. Bus footage. Why do I say bus footage? So in urban environments where a lot of our cases happen, oftentimes there just so happens to be some form of public transit that is going by in the moment, or has gone by just before, or has gone by just after. And the buses, I'll use the San Francisco Muni buses right now, they have 9 cameras that are running all the time and recording. And you can access those, you can request copies of those through what is known as the Sunshine Act or PRA, Public Records Act requests. So you can say to San Francisco Muni, I would like all video from all buses that traveled through the intersection of Market and 16th Street between 4:55 and 5 p.m. on June 1st, X year. They'll be able to do that for you. And it is sometimes stunning what you can find from these types of images. We had a case where a client was on a moped, got hit by a car making a left turn directly in front of him, and the flying through the air when he got hit happened to be captured by the front camera of a bus that was at the intersection perpendicular to all this. It was absolutely devastating evidence in terms of just seeing the awfulness of what our client went through. It was the kind of thing that added value to the case. Other things to obtain early are geotagged social media. If you're having a hard time finding the evidence that you need from these routes that we've already suggested, then looking to see if there's any sort of geotagged social media. This can be helpful often if there are bigger crowd events. Sometimes people will be tagging things or noting that they were there. If there are witnesses in the police report, it can be important to talk to those witnesses because what they say to the police is not always what the police write down. What do I mean by that? Most police officers are doing the best job they can in the moment. If you happen to have been at a collision scene, you'll see that they'll oftentimes have a little spiral bound notebook and they'll take some notes as they're doing things, and they've got their body worn camera running, and then they'll put it back in their pocket. They may go to 4, 5, 6, 7 other incidents before the end of their shift and before they're typing things up. And they may have taken the best notes that they possibly could, but they're not going to be comparing those notes to their body worn camera footage. And oftentimes the witness statements, either our clients, the defendants, other witnesses, aren't accurate. So if you're relying on what a witness says in a police report, it's wise to reach out to that witness and perhaps get a secondary statement from an investigator. If what you see from a witness is problematic or curious in light of what you know about the collision, that's another opportunity to ask the witness, I've looked at the police report. I'm trying to match it with the evidence. Could you help me understand what you saw there? And that's, again, an opportunity to help tamp down the evidence on the liability side. We mentioned multiple agencies responding to an incident. So while the police might do a police report, or police, sheriffs, highway patrol, whomever it is, oftentimes the fire department will also respond, and they will have a patient care report. Then in many agencies, the fire department may be the initial responder with a paramedic who does their own independent report, but they'll then package and give them to an outside ambulance company. This happens all the time in San Francisco. AMR, King Ambulance are two of the contractors. And so that's to relieve some of the pressure from the fire department. So fire department comes, evaluates, renders initial care, packages, hands off to ambulance. Ambulance does transport. What do you have there? Another patient record. And these are the areas where, particularly if you say you have a brain injury or a loss of consciousness, you may start seeing trends there of the person had repeated questioning on the ride between the collision site and the hospital. So there are a number of different reports and pieces of information that can be very helpful in gathering information at the very beginning. Also, something to gather at the very beginning are medical records. So we ask for the client to give us a list of their medical care. That's usually ambulance, ER, hospitalization, surgeries. We like to do a first round order of medical records so that we can get those initial treatment records right off the bat, get a sense of what's going on. Oftentimes, the client has ongoing care, and that's something where it's important to just use whatever system one's office chooses to use to have ticklers to follow up. That if that client has had a surgery and it's going to take up to 6 months for the surgery and physical therapy to reach its maximal improvement, to then calendar 6 months out for all the PT, follow-up visits, etc., to then order those records at that next phase. But one of the reasons it's beneficial to get the records up front is in that early case evaluation, you want to gather as much information as you can, because you're also going to want to reach out to the insurance company and let them know that you're representing this person and give them a sense at the outset of what these injuries are looking like, so that the insurance company, the adjuster, can start adequately setting reserves and assessing the case. At the risk of saying something controversial, I don't know that it necessarily is, but we do tend to provide everything we possibly can to the insurance company right off the bat. So if we have the police report, if we have body-worn camera footage that's favorable, if we have medical records, if we have bills, anything that helps our narrative, we want to empower the adjuster with, so that the adjuster can start understanding, oh yeah, this is a case where I'm probably going to have to pay policy. Also in that initial gather, public resources. I mentioned earlier that there is the Sunshine Act, or the Public Records Act. The federal version of that is the Freedom of Information Act. And from that, one can get all sorts of information. Some examples. Say you want to be able to put this collision together because there's going to be a dispute about liability. You may want to get the striping diagram, the as-built. These are all things that you can get from the Department of Public Works or street engineering. You can get timing cards. These show how the light phases work at a particular intersection. Again, if there's an argument about who had the right of way when something happened. There may be areas where it has the potential to be a government defendant. And in that situation, doing those PRA requests early on for policies, procedures, other things. Different example, we have had a few cases that involved trees and tree maintenance. Getting the policies and procedures for those maintenance elements early in the case can help one understand what the governmental entity should have been doing that it failed to do. Another area that can be very helpful is getting prior incidents. And these go to, say, dangerous conditions cases. SWITRS, the statewide integrated traffic reporting system, used to be a royal pain in the ass to get information from. Now it's digital. You can just search for it using Google and you should be able to find it. But the database is managed through Berkeley now. That's tims.berkeley.edu. And you'll find the SWITRS section there. That will allow you to click into various locations and get information on what's happened there. Now, there's a pro and a con on SWITRS. The pro is that it exists. The con is that not every incident ends up making it there. And what do I mean by that? It takes traffic collision reports and it uploads those. In the past, there have been periods where there have been backlogs, sometimes of up to 6 months. So you might not have the more recent traffic collisions. And it doesn't include things that weren't reported. I know that goes without saying, but in situations where there may be a report of a dangerous intersection and lots of near misses, but no actual hits, it's much harder for those types of cases. So you're not going to find that in SWITRS. Thank you for listening, and please join us next week as we continue this conversation. If you're enjoying what we're doing here with Cooper's Code, please help us extend our reach by giving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and consider sharing an episode with a friend. Please email us at podcast@coopers.law with questions, comments, feedback, and suggestions you have for who you'd like to see on the show. To all of you doing justice out there, happy hunting.